Welcome back. Since I made the video about the Sigrdrifa ending, I've found some very interesting things, so it seems worthwhile to make a follow-up. A brief follow-up, but a follow-up. The first of these is a statement which Nichika Oono wrote about their ending, which good old Mafia Kajita-san read aloud at a promo event with the other main seiyuu. You might have already seen this though, because I translated the excerpt and uploaded it as a separate video, which I recommend you go watch first, because we're gonna talk about it in just a second. But first, there's something I have to correct myself on. So in the last video I used she when talking about Oono-san, and strictly speaking I don't know that this is wrong. However, about 2 days after the video went live, I discovered this picture on the Sigrdrifa staff blog. These dashing fellows from right to left are colorist Ayaka Murakami, line producer Shinsuke Sugimoto, animator and storyboard artist Nichika Oono, and the mysterious newcomer animator I mentioned last video, Yu Saito. And first of all, love the cowboy hat and power stance. That's good. Definitely a Chad. Maybe a girl? But probably not. Now, Nichika is a distinctly feminine name, and actually a very cute name, especially the way they write it. And that is what they chose to be credited under, so if they did turn out to be a girl, wouldn't be too surprising. They would be merely one of many trans and non-binary people to work in the industry. Nonetheless, it's clear that whether or not they turn out to be a man, or indeed a woman, or non-binary, or anything else, I messed up. So I'm going to do what I should have done all along and just use they until someone tells me otherwise. So with apologies to Oono-san. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about what Oono-san had to say. Right off the bat, Oono-san says something which gave me pause, made me rethink a little bit about some of the things that I said. They say,
通常エンディングの絵コンテは1914年10月5日に起きた史上初の空中戦に勝利したフランス軍機のクルー2名の生涯に着想を得て考えたものです。空を飛ぶ夢の乗り物はどうして殺戮兵器に姿を変えたのか。エンディングに登場する飛行機はすべて2人が存命だった期間内に登場した機体です。
Now, this says to me that Oono-san sees the two separate lines of interpretation I drew as actually being the same thing. The militarization of planes and the regret that these machines are used for something so gruesome is part of the general love of flying, which they suppose has been one of the unifying characteristics of military aviators from the very beginning. That's to say, I was wrong to characterize this regret as particular to avgeeks. This is an important caveat, and it's one that I should have made. After all, I did use Georges Guynemer as an example, and his love of flight was, in part, a love for the flying machines themselves. The fact that all the planes in the ending appeared in Joseph France and Louis Queneau's lifetime also slipped by me, but it's a good detail. If you're like me, then you probably remember one or two documentaries on the Apollo program which made a point to note that the span between the first flight by a practical powered flying machine and the day humans set foot on the moon was only a bit more than 65 years. That's not a long time, all things considered. In that light, I should hardly have to say, from October 1914 to April 1958, when Louis Queneau passed away, things changed just as much in the world of military aviation, perhaps less dramatically and less visibly, but certainly a lot. Of course, there's only so much that you can directly allude to in an ending like this, because it is an ending after all, but it does try. And in the end, that's a pretty small thing. Maybe the biggest thing, which the nature of it being an ED might have limited Oono-san, is addressing the reason why pilots fight in the first place. And if you recall, this was one of my big talking points. But as it turns out, Oono-san was thinking about it too. They mentioned that there are visual cues in the ending which allude to why Joseph and Louis decided to make the kill, but truth be told, I'm not entirely sure I'm not entirely sure what they're talking about. I suppose that what Oono-san is doing is that by having the Red Ribbon of Fate lead to the trenches and then showing those trenches, Oono-san wanted to point out that there was, after all, a war, and military aviators were as much part of that war as any other soldier. That men like Joseph and Louis use these machines to fight is perfectly natural and even inevitable. You know, Red Ribbon of Fate, that's why that's in there. But still, in the end, sad. I'm not confident about that interpretation, but I'm not sure what else Oono-san might have meant. In any case, I can hardly fault them for it. I ultimately may not be able to figure out what exactly Oono-san meant to show about why military aviation pioneers did what they did, but the fact that they were thinking about it from that perspective is a huge credit to them. Frankly, I might have underestimated them. Next, Ono-san talks about doing research, and I am not surprised at all that they explicitly mentioned the postcards. They really are fascinating. I love them. I am a bit surprised that they spent a whole half year researching, mostly because that implies that they were given an extremely generous amount of lead time on a production that doesn't seem to have been super meticulously planned out otherwise. It says to me that Ono-san was probably one of the first people they reached out to, which makes sense, but is also kind of funny. They also mentioned that there are a bunch of references to war movies throughout, which I actually didn't pick up on at all, but that's on me. Truth be told, I don't think the local Blockbuster or Hollywood Video had copies of The Blue Max or Hell's Angels or either version of the Dawn Patrol, and movies like these remain a bit of a gap in my knowledge. If any of you can spot something I haven't, please tell me in the comments. I would love to know what Ono-san is talking about here. But in the meantime, I don't know. I have some movies to watch, clearly. But lastly, Ono-san closes their statement by inviting everyone interested in these things to discuss them. Well, clearly we invited ourselves. Well, Ono-san, we are doing what you asked. And you know what? This is the best validation I could have possibly asked for doing this project. Now I just wish that I could somehow let Ono-san know that, we're here. ねえ、小野さん、こうだよ。想像通りに海外にも興味のある方がいて、同時意識してるよ。この話を日本語でちゃんと説明できないが、どうか伝えてほしいんだ。でも無理だな。There is absolutely no chance that they would make it this far into the video after so much English. 仕方ないな。Oh well, that's it for now. As usual, there have been major hiccups in my ability to do things for this channel, but you've heard that enough from me. I'll be back soon enough. Stay safe out there.